at 10 a.m. Apologies, we were having some technical difficulties earlier, so we are a little bit late, but better late than never because we have a great slate of SEC games today. I am live from 312 Pizza Company, as I am every Saturday morning, and I appreciate them so much for having me every week. It's one of my favorite places to hang out in Germantown. I think it's the best pizza in Nashville. So come out to 312 Pizza Company, grab some pizza. If pizza's not your thing, they have plenty of Chicago favorites on the menu. They have Italian beef sandwiches, Chicago dogs. So if you want a place to come grab some really good food, some local craft beers, watch some football games, come out to 312 Pizza Company and hang out for the day. And if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for some money on the side, they are hiring bartending positions, wait staff, kitchen positions, host positions. So if you are looking for some money, come out to 312 Pizza Company, fill out an application because I know that they would appreciate your help very much. We've got a great slate today of SEC games. As I mentioned, we have the first college football playoff rankings released this week. Big point of contention for some college football fans out there. Cincinnati being left out of the top four, a team that I personally thought, if they're not in the top four this week after beating Notre Dame, easily the most difficult test on their schedule, they're not going to get in the top four. It's going to take Oregon, Michigan State, Alabama, Georgia, one of those teams in the top four to win more games, and maybe that won't even be enough. So that was a point of contention. Oklahoma being ranked 8th, an undefeated team sitting at 8. I personally agreed with that decision. Although Oklahoma is undefeated, I don't think their record is indicative of what they've done so far this year. So the College Football Playoff Committee kind of committing to some things that they say that they pay attention to. The eye test, head-to-head matchups, but some things that just don't really necessarily make sense. And kind of showing us that, hey, if you're a group of 5 school, you don't belong in the top 4, kind of setting a precedent there. So a lot of shakeup in the college football world with those initial college football playoff rankings being released this past week. But there are some games today that could completely change things coming into next week. Mississippi State in the top 25. They're not even in the AP top 25, but the college football playoff recognizing them at number 17. So Mississippi State has a big game today, could adjust where the rankings are coming up because we're getting in the nitty gritty of the season. I mean, these games matter. These rankings, while it's still early in terms of college football playoff conversation, these rankings matter and these games absolutely matter when it comes down to the college football playoff discussion. So we'll get into all of the games of the day, the SEC slate of the day. I'll give you my picks of the day, some thoughts that you may not have thought of that you want to put some money on these games. So first and foremost, this game is one of my favorite games of the day, just because of all of the pageantry that I know will be surrounded by it. Liberty going into Vaught Hemingway and taking on Ole Miss, number 16 team in the country in the college football playoff rankings, at least. Hugh Freeze making his return to Oxford. Now, I don't necessarily know how Rebel Nation feels toward Hugh Freeze. I don't know if this is going to be a warm welcome. I don't know if this is going to be something that Hugh Freeze has been dreading over the past few weeks, but Hugh Freeze nonetheless making his return to Oxford. Ole Miss coming off of a 31-20 loss to Auburn. Liberty, on the other hand, routed UMass 62-17 last week. And although UMass isn't necessarily a team that makes you shake in your boots because they have, it's not like they have any sort of threat on either side of the ball, but Liberty making their presence known last week, putting up 62 points against UMass. So Malik Willis, I thought in 2020, I thought he was easily the most underrated quarterback in all of college football. And I think he's showing that again this year. Against UMass, he passed for 4 touchdowns, 307 yards, and 37 yards on the ground. He had a 60-yard touchdown pass to their wide receiver, DJ Stubbs, in the first quarter. Kind of his biggest highlight of the day coming in the first quarter. But on the season so far, Malik Willis has thrown for 1,986 yards, 21 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. He scored on 9 rushing touchdowns, averaging 5.5 yards per carry. I mean, when you say dual threat, there are a lot of people that come to mind. Probably not Malik Willis, but he should, because he really is the complete package. He's got one heck of an arm. He can get it done on the ground. Last season, he led the team in rushing. Their running back didn't even run more than Malik Willis. I mean, he has just been outstanding so far in his tenure at Liberty. But one thing that you may say, okay, great, he can do it with Liberty. He can do it against these teams that aren't ranked in the top 25, that aren't putting up, 500 yards of offense per game. But Malik Willis is no stranger to the SEC. He started his career at Auburn. He was recruited by Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And then when Hugh Freeze got the head coaching job at Liberty, he followed the guy who recruited him and ended up transferring to Liberty. So he is no stranger to the difficulty in the SEC, to what the expectations are in the SEC. So don't underestimate Malik Willis in this game, but also do not underestimate Matt Corral, because he has been outstanding this year. He is a Heisman front runner where it stands right now. And against Auburn, their 31-20 loss last week, he passed for 289 yards, rushed for 1 touchdown and 45 rushing yards on the ground. So, I mean, not necessarily a highlight day for Matt Corral, but he has plenty of highlight games on his resume that we can kind of look past that one. We can say that Matt Corral is probably putting that game in the rear view against a pretty stout Auburn defense and moving on to this game, hopefully trying to get back on track. But one caveat here, Lane Kiffin let it slip in a press conference this week that Ole Miss practiced without 9 of their original 11 starters earlier this week. So Ole Miss is going to be pretty shallow on offense. Matt Corral may be without some of his biggest targets. So that is one thing to watch this week. And I think that Liberty knows that this is their biggest test of the season. Malik Willis is a bona fide superstar. If I haven't bragged on him enough, I will continue to do so. He is a bona fide superstar. He could be he's legitimately an option for a first-round draft pick. And I think that he knows that. And I think that he knows going into Ole Miss on a national stage, this is his opportunity to prove that. I don't think that Liberty gets the win here, but I do think that they keep it closer than Vegas thinks. The spread here is currently at 9.5. I'm going to take Liberty plus 9.5. I think this is a revenge game for Hugh Freeze. I think that he's going to want to come back into Ole Miss and make a statement. I think Malik Willis wants to let everyone know, hey, if you don't know me now you know. And I think that Ole Miss being so riddled with injury, Liberty is going to be able to take advantage of that. Again, Ole Miss gets the win here, but the best value for your buck here is going to be Liberty plus 9.5. So hey, Hugh Freeze, enjoy your homecoming. Also, the SEC CBS game of the day. This is going to be a really exciting game that I'm excited to watch. Number 13 Auburn going into College Station, taking on number 14 Texas A&M. Now, both teams entered this game at 6-2. Bo Nix. If anybody knows my feelings toward Bo Nix, ever since he got his very first start at Auburn, I thought he was overrated. I thought he was no good. I thought he was an interception machine, because he was. And I wasn't high on Bo Nix. And I have been underestimating Bo Nix this entire season. But I think that getting benched by Georgia State was the best thing that has ever happened to him, because he has been playing his best football of his career since that game. He took care of Ole Miss last week handedly, 31-20. He completed almost 77% of his passes in the past 2 games. Auburn ran for 207 yards on 46 carries against Ole Miss last week and limited Ole Miss to just 4 yards per carry. So Bo Nix is doing his job very much so, but the rest of that Auburn team is doing their job as well. They're a run-heavy team, and that defense is not going to let Texas A&M and Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane run all over them. Now, Texas A&M, I'm going to give them credit where credit is due, because they put up huge numbers. They beat Alabama, and then the following 2 weeks, they've been putting up huge numbers. But it was against Missouri and South Carolina. And even against Missouri, the team that has the worst defense in college football. Just let that sink in for a second. It's an SEC team that has the worst defense in college football. Zach Calzada only completed 51% of his passes against Missouri and against South Carolina, both 2 defenses. South Carolina, granted, their defense is better than Missouri, but that's not necessarily saying much. Those are 2 teams that are, I would say, 2 of the least threats in the SEC, if you want to throw Vanderbilt in there as well as the kind of bottom 3 teams in the SEC right now. Now, Auburn goes into this game knowing that they have a legitimate shot at getting to Atlanta. They have 2 losses on their schedule now, Penn State, not an SEC team, and Georgia, a team that kind of seems like they're going to rout anyone they play. So if Auburn wins out, they beat Texas A&M and they end up beating Alabama in the Iron Bowl, they punch their ticket to the SEC championship. So I think that Auburn knows that they win this game and their chances at Atlanta are still alive. Texas A&M is going to have a little bit of a harder time getting there after losing to Mississippi State. Alabama will have to lose to both Auburn and another team on the rest of their schedule. They play LSU today. Doesn't seem like LSU is going to get the win in Tuscaloosa. My Tigers just not really doing it for me so far this season. So I think that Auburn knows the number 13 team in the country. They've been underestimated so far this year. Going into College Station is going to be a really, really tough matchup. But that offensive line has not looked great for Texas A&M. I think that this Auburn defense is going to pressure Zach Calzada enough to make a few mistakes. So I do think that Auburn gets the win here. I don't think it's going to be a blowout of any proportion. I do think that this is going to be a rubber match, a serious back and forth game. But I do think that Auburn escapes College Station unscathed, and their hopes to get to Atlanta in the SEC championship stay alive here. So give me Auburn to beat Texas A&M. Again, this is Southeastern CaroLINES. I am Caroline Fenton. I am your host, and I am here every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I'm previewing the SEC slates of the day, giving you my betting picks, and I do it every Saturday morning at 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. Appreciate them so much for hosting me every week, and I also appreciate them for making such great pizza. If you haven't tried it, come out to 312 Pizza Company, watch some of the games today, put some money on the games, and then come watch them at 312 Pizza Company. It's one of my favorite places in Germantown. But we've also got a pretty interesting game here. Number 17, Mississippi State, which is wild. I saw that the College Football Playoff Committee put Mississippi State in at number 17. And I'm great for the Bulldogs, just not what I expected. AP kept them out of the top 25, but the CFP giving the Bulldogs a nice little nod, but they traveled to Fayetteville, taking on Arkansas today. It's going to be the pass-heavy Bulldogs against the very run-heavy Razorbacks. Now, last week, Mississippi State made a very big statement, beating Kentucky 31-17. I told y'all last week, I had a weird feeling that Mississippi State was going to get it done against Kentucky, and they did. I took Mississippi State on the money line last week. Listen to me, I promise. I know what I'm talking about. But last Saturday, beating Kentucky 31-17. Mississippi State is 3-1 in its last 4 games. Their only loss in that stretch was against the number 2 team in the country, Alabama. Georgia and Alabama just kind of seem like they've been locked up. Other than Alabama's one smudge against Texas A&M, I'm not going to knock those losses on your resume just because of those losses against Alabama and Georgia. But Mississippi State made a statement against Kentucky. Will Rogers set an SEC single game record for completion percentage. He completed 36 of 39 passes, good for 92.3%. That's insane. He's completing 75% of his passes this season, good for 3rd in the FBS. Will Rogers has been outstanding, and something about this air raid offense, this Mike Leach offense, it's just clicking with Will Rogers. Now, on the other side, Arkansas is coming off of a bye week after an October 23rd win over FCS Arkansas Pine Bluff, a fun little in-state rivalry there. Snapped their 3-game losing streak. That's exactly what they needed to kind of get back on track. 3-game losing streak. Get another win on the schedule, bye week, get healthy, get rested. So Arkansas is coming into this game kind of, I think, with a fresh perspective. And I think that that could be exactly what Arkansas has been needing. Now, Arkansas has the 4th best rushing attack in the country. They trail Air Force, Army, and Ole Miss, 3 very run-heavy teams that put up a ton of yards on the ground. But also, Mississippi State has the 5th best rush defense in the country behind Wisconsin, Georgia, the best defense in all of college football, UT San Antonio, and Alabama. So Mississippi State, they are not letting teams run all over them, but that's Arkansas's biggest threat. One caveat to that, though, is that Mississippi State's rush defense absolutely is elite, and I'm going to give them credit for that. But they have yet to face a true rushing quarterback, and that's exactly what KJ Jefferson is. So I'm going to take Arkansas -3.5 here. That half hook makes me a little bit nervous because I could totally seeing it being a game that's a difference between a field goal. But I mean, on the money line here, it's just not necessarily worth your while. So I'm going to take Arkansas -3.5. I think that 3-game losing streak, they had a taste of what success felt like at the beginning of the season. They played outstanding at the beginning of the season, dropping 3 games in a row. Like I said, they got that win on the books. They have a bye week. They're healthy. Mississippi State could have a little bit of a hangover after beating Kentucky, a huge win. They're ranked in the top 25 in the college football playoff rankings. Mississippi State could be overlooking Arkansas here. And I think that Arkansas wants to get back on track. A statement SEC West win. And I think Arkansas does exactly that. I'm taking Arkansas -3.5. Now, this game coming up is probably my favorite game on the slate this week. I love Liberty Ole Miss just for all the drama that I know is going to ensue with Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss. But this game, I think, is going to be very interesting because I think that this is the game where Kentucky gets even more exposed than they did last week. Tennessee traveling to Lexington, taking on number 18, Kentucky. Now, Chris Rodriguez, Kentucky's running back, oh my gosh, one of the best running backs in the league. 775 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns on the season. Chris Rodriguez has been absolutely lights out. And at the beginning of the season, we thought Will Levis was going to be the bread and butter of this offense. He put up almost 400 passing yards. We thought, okay, finally, Mark Stoops got this passing quarterback that Kentucky's been starving for years. But Chris Rodriguez has ended up becoming the heartbeat of this offense. Now, all credit to Will Levis. He's completing 66% of his passes. He's thrown for nearly 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns. But Will Levis is a turnover machine. I mean, Kentucky has the most turnovers on average in the SEC. They're averaging about 1.5 turnovers per game. And Will Levis is a big part of that. Now, Kentucky won this game last year because Tennessee was a turnover machine. Jarrett Quarantano throwing 2 pick sixes. I mean, they just handed that game on a silver platter to Kentucky. And I think that the tides are going to turn this week. Kentucky's defense is ranked 34th in the nation. Got to give them credit for that. Kentucky is in the top 20. This game is in Lexington. It feels like everything is turning in Kentucky's way. But I'm still going to take the Vols on the money line, -115. Now, if my sources serve me correct, the line has shifted a little bit here. Originally, it was Kentucky -0.5, and then it was Tennessee -0.5, and now I think the line has shifted even more in Tennessee's favor. I believe right now the line stands at Tennessee -1. So I haven't double-checked what the sports books are saying now, what Vegas is saying now. So the odds may be better, Tennessee -1. I feel totally comfortable taking Tennessee -1 here. But last I checked, it was Tennessee on the money line -115. So I'm going to rock with that. But I think the key here is Tennessee's super quick offense. They have one of the fastest offenses in college football. If you watched that Tennessee-Alabama game last week, which a lot of people did, most watched college football game so far this season, which is wild. But it gave Alabama some trouble early. I mean, Alabama was making some mistakes, false starts, roughing the punter, just making some silly mistakes that Alabama doesn't necessarily make. But that team is so good, and they are so disciplined, and I can only imagine that Nick Saban instilled the fear of God in those men and said, if you continue to make mistakes, I'm coming for you. But this Kentucky team is not nearly as disciplined and is not nearly as good as that Alabama team. So I think that Tennessee is going to be able to trip up Kentucky with that super quick up-tempo offense. Hendon Hooker has only been picked off twice. He's throwing for almost 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Kentucky has a solid defense, absolutely. But Tennessee's faced some pretty solid defenses as well this year. They just played Alabama last week. So, I mean, Tennessee is no stranger to facing difficult defenses. Hendon Hooker threw for 3 touchdowns, 283 yards on 29 attempts against Alabama. Like I said, that's a stout defense right there, but Hendon Hooker was still able to get it done. Kentucky's offense in the past few weeks has ranked at the bottom of the SEC. They're beating only Vanderbilt in their offensive efficiency. So this Kentucky team that we were promised going into the season that we saw in the very beginning, Will Levis throwing for almost 400 yards. He threw for 250-ish later in the season, but since then it's been 150, 180, 200. Will Levis hasn't been the Will Levis that we were promised. I originally picked Kentucky to finish second in the East. And yeah, they have big wins. They beat Florida. That was a huge win for them. I just don't think the stats necessarily match up here. Tennessee hasn't dropped 2 in a row to Kentucky since 1976 and 1977. And I don't think that changes here. I think Tennessee is able to get it done in Lexington this week. Another game of note this week, LSU traveling to Alabama, taking on number 2 Alabama at Bryant-Denny. The spread here is 29.5. This is a tricky one because you'll know where my allegiances lie. And it would hurt me so deeply to say that Alabama, the team that I hate to my core, could beat my Tigers by 30 points. But you know what? They probably can. And I think that they will. So I'm going to take Alabama minus the 29.5 right here. LSU season kind of feels like they're punting on it. Their original starting quarterback, Miles Brennan, entered the transfer portal. We know that Ed Orgeron is exiting the program at the end of this season. It just kind of seems like LSU at this point says, hey, let's get healthy. Let's put up as much numbers as we possibly can. Let's not embarrass ourselves, but let's continue to recruit. Let's recoup next season with a new coach. And I think that's exactly how things are going to go here, traveling into Bryant-Denny. So I'm going to take Alabama minus 29.5 as well. So here we go. Quick recap. Liberty and Ole Miss. Give me Liberty plus 9.5. Most underrated quarterback in all of college football. Malik Willis, the Liberty Flames quarterback. I'm so high on him. He can get it done in the air. He can get it done on the ground, and he's going to be able to do that against Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss gets the win here, but Liberty keeps it close. I honestly think it might be even as close as a field goal. So give me Liberty plus 9.5. I'm going to make that my lock of the day today. Auburn at Texas A&M. Give me Auburn here. It's kind of a tricky pick because it's at College Station, such a rowdy environment. And I know I've said it a million times before. Bo Nix throws picks and he does it on the road, and that's what he does best. But Bo Nix has proved himself to be the Bo Nix that we were promised when he came into Auburn. Bo Nix playing the best football of his career. This Texas A&M defense is no joke. But I think that Auburn has enough threats, both with Bo Nix and on the ground as well with Tank Bigsby. I think that they're able to narrowly beat out Texas A&M here. Mississippi State at Arkansas. Mississippi State coming off of a huge win against Kentucky, a statement win against Kentucky, beating them 31-17. Arkansas had a rough stretch, losing 3 in a row. They're coming off of a bye week. They're fresh. They're at home. Give me Arkansas minus 3.5. Tennessee at Kentucky. Give me Tennessee -1 on the money line, whatever the best value is there, because this line has been shifting like crazy. I mean, Kentucky, yes, they're the 18th best team in the country. And yes, they only have a few losses on their schedule. But I think that their wins aren't necessarily indicative of how good of a team that they are. They haven't put up that great of numbers. This Tennessee offense is quick. Hendon Hooker has turned this offense around. The Tennessee -1 on the money line, whatever the best value is for you there. Again, LSU traveling into Bryant-Denny, into Tuscaloosa. Spread here is 29.5. I think it's shifted maybe 28.5. Take Alabama. I mean, LSU season is just kind of, it's over. It's over. And Alabama knows that they're still crawling their way back into that top spot in the SEC. And they know that Auburn is on their tails. Maybe even Texas A&M is on their tails to get in the top spot in the SEC West to make their way to Atlanta. So I know that Alabama is going to want to make some statements here against LSU. And of course, the last time LSU went into Bryant-Denny, they beat them. That was the year they won the national championship. That was the Roll Tide what? You know the rest. So I think that Alabama is going to be able to take care of LSU handedly here. Unfortunately, my Tigers not doing it for me. But that is going to do it for me today. I'm Caroline Fenton, and I am here live at 312 Pizza Company in Germantown every Saturday morning at 10 a.m., giving you my picks for the SEC slate of the day. And I will see y'all next Saturday at 10 a.m. here at 312 Pizza Company.